Meaningful partnerships between parents and educators can truly prepare our children for success. Welcome to Conversations with the Education Enthusiast, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to be your child's best advocate. Now, here's your host, Dr. Balan Joseph.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of Conversations with the Education Enthusiast. I'm your host, Dr. Balan Joseph, and I am very elated to join or have this special guest join us today for a conversation. She is a unique guest that I'm bringing on, but very appropriate guest since I am definitely an advocate for all things education. We have Laura Hine with us today. She is a candidate for Pinellas County School Board, and she's just going to talk to us today. We're going to talk with her today about why she's running and why we might want to consider voting for her. So with no further ado, Laura, welcome so much to this space. It's podcast via YouTube videos, but welcome anyway, either way.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I really appreciate being here, and I value all the work and your commitment in the education space.
Thank you.
Amazing.
I appreciate that. Well, let's give people a little bit of background. So who are you? Where did you come from? Are you from St. Pete? So give us a little bit of background about you.
Sure. So I was born and raised across the bridge in Tampa.
Okay.
And I went to K-12 public school. I was bused during integration when we were still busing. That's an important part of my history, I feel like. And then I went to the U.S. Naval Academy for college up in Annapolis. I studied aerospace engineering. And then I was an officer in the Navy for 6 years out of San Diego, California. I was on ships, did a couple of deployments to the Middle East. And I came home and I became a licensed general contractor. So I've built a number of buildings. If you've flown Southwest Airlines, that was one of my projects. And most recently, the Tom and Mary James Museum of Western and Wildlife Art in downtown St. Petersburg. And about a year after that museum opened, Tom James asked me if I'd consider being the executive director of the museum. So that's a position that I serve in now. Okay. I had two young children along the way, a little bit later in life than most. I'm a mature mom. So I have a first and fourth grader. And that's what got me actively involved in education. But yeah, I grew up here, or I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, going to public schools. So it's been interesting to see public schools now through the parents' eyes. Yes. Some 30 plus years, 40 years later. So
yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I grew up the St. Pete area as well, or the Tampa Bay area. And it is very interesting now having children who are going through our school systems, whether it's public or private. I still feel like it's the school system, period. And there are things that I notice with how my children are educated, the things that they're learning, based on how I learned about 30 something years ago or 20 something years ago at this point, that I guess I'm kind of surprised that even with being in the age of technology, there's still so many things that are antiquated, or it's not as evolved as I thought it would be. Mm. There might have been things we did back then that I thought probably worked a lot better than what we're doing now. Have you noticed any of that with your kids and their educational experience in the school system now?
I'm not sure as much on the on the technology side or pieces like that. I think one of the biggest differences for me is this process of, if you're going to enter a lottery, in this process of sort of the magnet fundamental charter, sort of having all these different options, if you will, and having it be almost like a shopping experience. Yeah. Is what really struck me, as opposed to we just went to whatever school we were told to go to. And if that meant we got on a bus and went across town, that's what that meant. Right. And if that meant we were just up the street, then that's what that meant. Right. But not the whole situation of shopping and comparing and graded schools and things like that. So I'd say that's what really sticks out to me most.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I also, as I talk to teachers, and I spend a lot of time with our teachers, and ask them, I think this, over the last 20 years, really this data heavy mindset has had an impact on the classroom.
Yes.
So I think that's something I'm concerned about and interested in seeing how we can shift.
Absolutely.
And less so on the private schools or charter schools, so schools that have that autonomy. And, my children went to this beautiful preschool called Creative Play Preschool. And then they also spent some time at a private preschool when she had to close for a little bit. But, and I see what she does, and she's able to just create this space of creativity and freedom and learning through play and sort of all these things. And then you get into the system, you get into the kind of K-12 public system, and there's all these rules and regulations that I feel like are managing the teacher's time, micromanaging the teachers to a point where it takes that play and creativity and spontaneity. What if they want to spend the whole day doing science? Shouldn't they be able to do that? I mean, shouldn't they follow the kids and follow the learning? So that's something I'm really interested in, bringing the trust, respect, autonomy to our traditional public school teachers, as some of the other teachers in our community enjoy and thrive, right? Those classrooms, those schools thrive a lot because of that.
Yeah, and the kids thrive as a result. It's so tough though, because a lot of what is impressed upon teachers is state mandated, or in some cases federally mandated. So as a school board official, what is it that you feel you would be able to do to influence what teachers are able to cover, or the sense of autonomy that a lot of teachers complain that they really don't have? And it's true. I was in the classroom for 15 years. There are things that you can do, but when you have that timeline in preparation for the state standardized assessment, there's only so much realistically that you can do. So what would you do or realistically be able to do to support teachers in that regard?
And we've lost these amazing teachers because of having their hands tied and wanting to go elsewhere because they see a better way of doing things. So I would really like for us to change that. And I think there's a couple of ways we can do it. One, there are some states and counties that offer interesting programs. Like if you look at what Denver Public Schools does, it has a schools that they call innovation schools, and whatever name you want to give it, but essentially they have put aside this application package where a school, the principals, teachers can all work together and essentially create their own day, create their own school. And as long as they apply and they show, hey, look, we understand about the standards, about the test, fine, but this is how we propose to do it. Then they are approved this innovation school status, and they're able to be free of some of those state and federal mandates as long as they're doing these particular things. So I would really like for us to explore what are the things that Pinellas County can do. What are the things that we need them to show? Okay, we can demonstrate to you that we understand these particular measures that have to be met, and we propose doing it through this other way. And so I'm very interested in us creating a program similar to that. And then also I'm a pretty strong advocate. Like I know, as I've worked at our school, I have met every single legislator that is associated with our school, and I've had them to our school, and I have been to Tallahassee, and I have sat in on the education committee meetings, and I have met people who are making those decisions. It doesn't mean I can immediately change that legislation, but I believe as an elected school board member, I would have, not only the ability, but the responsibility to advocate for some of these things to be changed at the state level. So I would intend to do that. I would intend to first talk with our teachers. I want to hold like sessions around the county, so the seat I'm running for is the county-wide seat.
Okay.
So not, not one of the geographic areas.
Which is good to know.
I'm sorry.
I said, which is good to know so that people can know if they can
Yes,
for you, there's no limitations based on district lines.
that's right. It's the entire county of Pinellas all be on the ballot. So, so I would like to meet with different teachers because, I mean, granted, I've had relationships with, a certain number of them, and really hear from them. What are the strictures that you would like lifted that you believe tie your hands and that can help you thrive, and so your classroom thrives.
Right.
But that's a real focus for me. And I think we can do it. I do. I believe it. I am an impatient optimist.
Okay.
I really believe that things are possible, and I am impatient to get them done. So I will just keep asking the questions and keep finding a way.
Okay. You mentioned innovation school. Just curious, just for my own understanding and for understanding of someone who might be viewing this, who've never heard of an innovation school, are they set up similarly to charter schools if they have autonomy that a traditional public school?
So I think that's the idea. I mean, one of the things that makes some charters really successful, and not all of them are, unfortunately, right? We've had some that have closed and is very difficult for the families and children and the school system. But for the ones that are really good, I think one of the things that helps them be so successful is this autonomy, right? And so I believe that there should be more congruency between our traditional public schools and our charter public schools. So, these charter schools enjoy this autonomy when it comes to their school day, to curriculum, and they also have less financial oversight, whereas the public schools have less autonomy and curriculum in their school day and really strong financial oversight. So we're talking about taxpayer dollars here, to the tune in Pinellas County of $1.6 billion. I believe that all schools, including charter schools, should have strong financial oversight. And I believe that all of our schools, we should trust our teachers. One of the things I've done, Dr. Joseph, is I've definitely looked closely at teacher pay. And we can talk about that. I have charts where I've, put the teacher pay against the military pay scale, against our government service pay scale, against corporate increases over the last 20 years. And, really, it isn't the starting salary these days that's a challenge. It's those incremental annual changes or increases that don't even keep up with inflation. So I definitely also want to advocate around teacher pay. What we can do right now that's free is trust our teachers. Trust them, believe in them, respect them, and allow them to do what they need to do in their classrooms to meet those standards and, and all that. So that's, again, I know I've already said it, but that's something I feel very strongly about, that thriving teachers equal thriving classrooms. And the way we're going to have thriving teachers is by stopping this high level of micromanagement on their classrooms. And looking at the evaluation process. Okay. Goodness gracious. I could not believe it. I could not. Yeah. The first time I asked my principal to, show me what one of the teacher evals looks like. She didn't show me someone's personal eval, but just a blank one. I could not believe it. Now I'm the CEO of an organization right now, and I've been in business for a number of years, and I've been in the military as well. So I have experienced a number of places when it comes to leadership. Excuse me, I stutter. I'm glad I went to public school. I had great speech therapists. Leadership, personnel development, how you get the most out of people, and you see the different ways that you can do reviews and evaluations, also hiring, retention, all of these things. The HR component is really significant. So we have to make that better. Right. We have to make that better.
I agree, 100%. How do you think we can make that better? One of the things that I've noticed working in South County in particular in transformation zone schools, in Title I schools. One thing that I notice in schools that traditionally don't perform as strongly as schools in North County. Now, I'm not saying there's not struggling schools in North County, there are. But you find a lot of the struggling schools in South County. And South County is also where you find a higher population of Black and brown students. But you don't find a balance, in my opinion, of Black and brown teachers. So what is something that, and I think it's important before I even ask the question, I definitely want to state that it's important that students, all students, are exposed to diverse teachers because it gives them a different perspective of the world around them. And it gives them the opportunity, I think, to respect and appreciate differences and not feel like difference is a bad thing, something that has to change. We all have to be the same, but to understand that difference is beautiful and it should absolutely be celebrated and it should be respected. I think one of the most powerful ways we can do that is by having teachers who are Black, brown, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, who are in front of our students and giving them the educational tools that they need to be successful. However, it's very challenging to get and retain teachers of color. I would like to see that change. I think it's important, but that's something that traditionally our county just hasn't done well, in my opinion.
Right.
What do you think can be done to recruit and retain quality teachers, but also diversely qualified teachers?
Yes. One thing I am glad to see is I'm glad to see that. So it was in 2016 that the county established the Bridging the Gap plan, right? Bridging the gap between our Black and non-Black students. And one of their items on there that I'm glad to see is around the hiring and retention of Black and brown teachers. I think that we have about 18% minority students and about 8% instructional staff. And we have to do better there. So I am glad to see that it's at least in there. It's recognized as an important goal. But what are the steps that we're taking to recruit and retain those teachers? So I agree with you. And I think, when I do look closely at the Bridging the Gap plan, I know it has about six different measures in them that are all important. There's the discipline disparity, there's the ESE identification disparity, access to advanced coursework, the minority hiring and retention. I think we can do better. I think we can go further. And, early childhood education is one of those things that I believe we can go further on, as is, I believe, equity work. I know I mentioned it when we talked prior to recording, but I firmly believe that the next 100 years in America is going to be what we make it, and we have to educate our Black and brown students the way we have our white students, and we can. But we just have to have the will to make that commitment and also recognize different things might need to be done. I'm an advocate for an extended school day with enrichments, not an extended school day with testing and drilling and all those kinds of things, but with enrichments, with the kinds of things that other parents are driving their kids around to. I am also an advocate for a much better ratio when it comes to counselors and students. I've spent some time at Academy Prep, one of the schools in South St. Petersburg, and it's a school focused on middle school and on poverty and minority students, and they have 100% high school graduation rate. And I just asked them, I said, what is it you do? What are the things that you do? Because they don't have better teachers or better standards or better tests, so what is it you're doing to truly break the cycle of poverty? Because that's what that's what I believe that they're doing better. And they said it's that extended day with enrichments, and it's their ratio of counselors to students is 1 counselor per 100 students. Now that of course takes a significant financial investment, and it's one we have to be willing to make if we truly want to move the middle. I think one of the things, Balan, over the years that I've seen is I see that we kind of incrementally are doing things better. Like, okay, we'll do this a little better. Let's do this a little better. How do we really move the middle is one. And instead of playing at the edges, like we have these programs that kind of help a handful of kids, and I'm all for those programs. I'm like, if a kid needs a voucher to go, then you know what, go. But that's only going to help so many kids. What do we do to actually improve that school that they're trying to leave? To make sure that for all those other students that are there, education is an exceptional opportunity. So that's my focus.
I think it's a great focus because you're right. I feel like when I work for Pinellas County Schools, and no slight to anybody, I feel ultimately people who are in the school system, whether you're at the district level or you're in the classroom or you're the counselor or you are the facility maintenance worker, all of the people who are part of educating our children, ultimately, I believe they're there because they want to be there. They want to help children in some way, shape, or form. However, I feel like our county has done just enough to get by sometimes when it comes to certain initiatives. We'll do a little bit, as you've alluded to earlier, but we won't do enough to really push the needle, move the needle much further. Because my problem with that approach is, yes, we do benefit a small portion of children, but there's so many other who get left behind. And you have year after year after year after year that now passes, and that child is now further and further away from the starting point. And they're, in my opinion, being set up for failure and not success because we're not being more proactive or more intentionally aggressive when it comes to rolling out some of the things that we roll out. And I would love to see that change. But I also understand that on a board, you are one person out of however many people. It's like seven. Yeah, seven. So what is one thing that you would like to do, I guess, strategy-wise, to be able to work together with the other people on the board to be able to see some of the things happen that you would like to happen?
So I think really inspiring and leveraging our administration is super important. So if you look at like Kevin Hendrick, right, who's the head of teaching and learning up there, or all your different leaders up there, and really trying to inspire them to say, hey, we can do this better. In asking the questions. I mean, Dr. Joseph, I think sometimes it's about asking the questions and pushing and allowing and saying that we can do this. We can do things differently. And if we're going to, how? And I'm not sure, I'm not the person who's going to say how, but I think I'm the person who can be a catalyst to saying that we can. And it's important, and it's up to us to do this work. No one else is going to come in. No one else, we're not waiting for someone to come in and sort of do all of this for us. We have to be the ones. And and so I believe that. And so as I mentioned, I believe in meeting with teachers and administrators from all over the county and kind of hearing their ideas. And I believe that in our workshop format, especially as board members, really being able to ask those questions. In the board meetings, there's a preset agenda. You're moving through those various agenda items. Is that really the place to be asking these big questions? No, but it's in the work you do every day. And so I will be in people's offices and on the phone and asking these kinds of questions, and pushing for more, so we actually have kind of started doing this at our own school. I mean, there are a couple of things that I'm very proud of. We so we did start the after school programs. It took over the course of several years. We now have 16 unique after school programs that are scholarship for our students, and we provide a bus home. That's significant. And it's taken us some work to get that done. But if we can do that as volunteers, along with our teachers, to figure that out, we can certainly do that. I would like to start with all transformation zone schools, and then all Title I schools, and then all schools as possible. But I just think I think that, taking that one piece is possible. We can make that happen. So I definitely want to work on that. And then one of the other things was, we said, what if we could be one of these innovation schools? What if our school wanted to be kind of a learning through life sciences school? And so every year, you can start in kindergarten, everything is based around maybe food. And then first grade, everything's based around water. And then everything's based around climate, and then solar, or however you want to do it, but we would shift to a fully project-based learning, collaborative learning process, that kind of goes through those kinds of topics, and do it in a way that allows us to be free from some of those strictures. But we haven't gotten that out and up to the county or anything like that part yet, but at least having those early brainstorming conversations, and to see teachers come alive. I mean, when I would just ask it, hey, can we have an early morning meeting? And so I don't believe that I have to be the one with the solutions, but I believe that I have to allow people to feel that they are in a space that they can be creative. And as educators, for them to come alive, and so when it comes to leadership, I really feel like the state as a whole, we have to shift from this feeling of like telling teachers, I'm watching you, to I believe in you. Absolutely. I mean, there's such a difference. There's such a difference. So that's something that I am eager for. Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to mention is we worked on recreating our school grade. And I believe that Pinellas County should recreate our school grade. This school grade system is based on one test. It's based on this one test. And then it's got all those, I'm sure the math behind it, all the machinations around the top quartile, lowest quartile, and advanced, and all the different things that come up with what that grade is. And I don't believe that grade is a real measure. Of what's happening in that school. There are so many other important factors to a child's experience of school, including just the climate, just what it feels like when you walk in the door. Absolutely. What does it feel like? There are access to teachers and leaders, so many different things. So I would like for all of us to talk about what are the things, if we were going to measure schools and grade them, what are the things that we believe make for a strong school and a strong school experience? And I don't think it's just that one test.
I agree with that. It's absolutely not that one test, because every child does not learn the same, so they're not going to perform the same on assessments. And we see that year after year after year after year, and the achievement gap continues to widen. So no, I think you're making a valid point there. I would love to see stuff like that change. I would love to see schools not be measured solely on assessments, or that one particular assessment, the Florida State assessment. However, I know that there's so much funding that is associated with that assessment, which is why we focus so much energy on this assessment, and why our kids get so burned out, because they have to be prepped and primed for this assessment, because money is tied to these assessments. So there's so many layers.
It's the high stakes piece of it.
Yes. So I do love the idea of advocacy, the idea of asking questions, the idea of inviting teachers to have a voice. But I guess the next question I would ask is, how do you plan to engage parents and families? One of the things that I've heard often is that parents, especially parents who don't have a car, or they don't have a way to get out to the school board meetings, they are working, so they can't make the school board meetings. It's been, I guess, beneficial now that it's virtual. So you've gotten the recording that you can go back and look at. But you're right, a lot of those meetings are boring. If I can be honest, the things that they're talking about, most of the stuff parents doesn't really maybe understand or even care about.
Right.
There's certain items on the agenda that they might be passionate about, but the whole thing, it's very
it's procedural, it's scripted.
Yes, it's very
the work has been done before they've gotten to the meeting.
Yes.
I mean, the meeting's almost a report.
It is. It is a very long one.
Yeah.
So how do you plan to engage families? And families are so diverse when we talk about what constitute a family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of our underprivileged community. So how do you plan to engage them and feel a part of it?
So I'll start a little more closer to home first. One thing about this virtual environment that we've all been through for these 6 months now, and some families are still struggling with access to that, and that's something we have to fix. A lot of families have gained access that didn't have it previously and now understand about how to do these kinds of meetings. Is I think that again on a closer to home level, I think this makes parent-teacher conferences more accessible, right? I mean, why not shift to video type parent-teacher conferences? Because there are so many parents who can't get into school during the school day and are not having a simple parent-teacher conference. There are other ways we can do it. So that's one thing that I hope we take good out of this virtual situation. And I do think getting families involved in their schools is a challenge. And as somebody who was president of the PTA at my Title I school for several years, access was a really important part, and trying to create a community where all parents knew that their voice was valued, welcomed, desired, and we created access was part of what we focused on. A couple ways we did that in the beginning was first saying, bring your kids. Kids are welcome. Children are welcome. This is a school. Now, this is an elementary school. So, and then we provided food to make that accessible, because it was during dinner time, and so we provided food, and then that worked to a certain extent, and we created community gatherings at the school that had like food and learning. We would have like math and barbecue night and all this kind of stuff. And so we really tried to draw people to the school in a number of ways, but even then realized some people still aren't coming. And so we went and had our meetings offsite. We went to James Park. So James Park, Jamestown are in our school zone. Went there, had meetings there, brought food, and so just trying gradually to make the relationships and to create trust. I mean, isn't it about creating trust?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Belon, it's hard, and it takes years, and it takes going back, again and again. And so I think at the district level, I know there are some meetings held around the county, like the superintendent holds these cadre meetings right around the county where some parents are invited, but we've got to figure out a way to get that parent voice more. And I know there's a good relationship with PTA and our county council. PTA does awesome work. But how are we gathering, as an aggregate, more parent input at the district level? I don't know, but it's important, and I'm going to think more. I'm going to think more about that.
The last campaign trail a few years back, one of the candidates was a big advocate for moving the school board meetings around the county. And they did try to do that. It didn't last long, but I did notice when they moved one of the school board meetings to Gulfport. I live in Gulfport. It was a full house. It was bursting out of the seams. People had showed up because it was only a few minutes away from where they lived, as opposed to 30 minutes, 40 minutes for talk about traffic.
I like that idea.
just the, I guess, the nugget, because it was effective. People showed up, and they showed up in droves. So
well, and whether it's the official school board meeting or maybe one of the workshops or maybe, you know, something, but I agree with you getting down to, I mean, I guess I've just thought that I personally need to make sure that I'm getting around and getting the
that's
word
important
out.
too.
Yeah,
We didn't see a lot of school board members show up at our school.
yeah, my goal
Put
is,
on
you
one
know,
hand the number.
yeah, so my thought in my mind is that quarterly at least, I would be in sort of the 4 different parts of the county, tell all the schools, you know, and maybe have it at a high school because they have the largest space available, and just say, come on, let's talk. I want to hear from you. Like that's, how else do you hear from people, you know? And online is not the best way. I mean, we all have to agree online is not the best way. So I personally will be communicating around the county and holding these kinds of listening sessions, because I have to tell you, and you might, I'm sure you, I don't know how you felt during this process, but I am tired of talking. I mean, I can talk all day long and I'm happy to share ideas with you, but really I think the success is in listening. The success in a county of this size, we have 14,000 employees. So now that's everyone. That's our instructional staff, our service employees, everybody. But I want to hear from them. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from parents. I want to listen, and then and do the work. So I'm really looking forward to transitioning to that kind of role again. And that's what I've done. That's what I've done as an advocate for the last handful of years, as a very engaged advocate, is I have done a lot of holding sessions, asking, listening, creating ideas together, and then pushing for those ideas, going and seeing my legislators, whether it's in their offices in St. Pete or driving up to Tallahassee for their committee meetings or whatever else. But that's what it takes.
It's important. Absolutely. And I did want to mention, so Laura is in her car, but the only reason she's in her car is because she is working hard on the campaign trail today. She was canvassing, and her phone was about to die, so she had to move to the car. So everybody think that she didn't care about this interview, she just in the car. No, she is working.
Thank you.
She's trying to get the word out about what she's doing to get elected. We do need empathetic school board members who are very much connected to what's happening in the classroom now. I think the school board members that we have, I think they are good people. I have personal relationships with several of them. But I think there's something to be said when you are a parent, when you are actively engaged in the schools, when you have that perspective that you bring to the board, because you're going to be more likely to fight for what parents need and what children need. And a lot of those opportunity gaps that we see in our county, you have to be aware of those, because if you aren't, you're not going to make decisions that benefit all students, not just the portion of them. And I do believe that you are one of those candidates, which is why I wanted to take the time to allow people to hear from you directly, because a lot of times, you know, we don't research candidates. I know. Kind of any, mini, miny, mo when we get to the polls, which is so unfortunate in this age where we can get so much information in a short amount of time. But I wanted to make it easy for parents, at least the parents who follow me and the families who follow me, to be able to learn a bit about you, to make an informed decision. Because we're in a critical time. You're welcome. We're in a critical time. Yeah. We need elected officials who are going to fight for every child.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I will work my tail off. I will work my tail off as if my own child's education depends on it, because it does.
Absolutely.
And not just mine, though. It has never been about my kids or even like a small group. It is about all kids. Absolutely. And especially kids that are at a disadvantage when it comes to educational opportunities. We can do better. We must do better. All of these kids, I mean, we all know this, but people have to be reminded. The kids of today are the families, communities, workforce, military. I mean, it is an economic security issue, national security issue, family happiness issue, that we be really, really good at education for
Yes.
all of our students.
Absolutely.
And we can,
Absolutely.
and I will work my tail off.
I believe that. I really do. So is there anything that you want to share with us before we finish up for today? Any final message that you want to leave our potential voters with?
Well, I think I would share that we're about 5.5 weeks out, or I'm not sure when, so November 3rd is coming quickly, but even more than that, the vote by mail ballots are coming out September 29th. They get mailed. And so a lot of people are going to be voting soon. Within the next couple of weeks, people are voting soon. And thank heavens you and probably your audience and the people that I know are actively engaged in education and listening and learning and researching. But there are hundreds of thousands of people who are going to vote because of other elections on the ballot, right? So we have to get the word out. So anything anyone can do to help spread the word. I have a Facebook page, is vote Laura Hine, as well as my website is that. I'm available for questions. If you're curious, contact me. And I certainly love to talk about education. I'm the mother of 2 young kids in our public schools. I'm an experienced and thoughtful business leader, and I'm a veteran. And I will serve you and all of us. I will work hard and to make education excellent for all of our students. So join me, support me. I would really, really appreciate it. And please give me your ideas. I'm ready to listen.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. I enjoyed talking to you today, and I'm rooting for you. You got my vote.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. That means a lot to me.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's continue the conversation at theeducationenthusiast.com and via Instagram and Facebook at The Education Enthusiast.